Central Mass Chronicles, where we take a look at issues not only nationally from the state, but locally as well. But whatever we're looking at, we do it with a Worcester Central Mass perspective. And today we're joined by Brad Wyatt, who brings things from a business perspective. Brad, thanks for being here. And of course, Roberta Schaefer, former executive director of the Research Bureau and a longtime Central Mass chronicler here on Central Mass Chronicles. Let me begin with you then Roberta, in the fact that there is a push once again for there to be undocumented immigrants and getting a driver's license. And the argument from the state is that, or some, I should say, some state senators and some state representatives, is that we will be safer, the entire population will be safer if you give somebody who is driving anyway the ability to have the license, to go through the test, to have their eyesight checked, and to be able to get insurance. There was just a recent march in Worcester about this. There has been marches in a couple of other cities about this as well, with people coming out and demanding that they get these driver's licenses. What do you think?
Well, this is really odd. People who've come here, illegally in the first place and have broken the law are now demanding that they break more laws. I have a problem with that because our whole system is based on laws. This is what our civil society is. And we're down a path with acceptance of a lot of illegal activity. Now, I, for one, would like to see a resolution to the whole issue of the illegals who are here. And I certainly want Congress to do that and to put them on a path to citizenship. We're not sending 12 million people back to wherever they came from. This is totally unrealistic. Some people have been here, 20, 30 years already. So they've grown up here, and this is all they know. And, Congress has really abdicated its responsibility. But I don't think that means that we should encourage more law unabidingness, if there's such a word. And what we know is that in the course of the last number of years, there have been a number of accidents that have been committed by illegals.
Isn't that the argument, though? So isn't the argument that is being made that somehow we will be safer, that then this individual, instead of driving away, and Brad, if you want to jump in, that they will have some form of insurance, or they will at least know the rules of the road? I know that one of the marchers was quoted as saying, gee, he feels really bad that he hops in his car every day, drives to work, and then drives his kids to school without a license. He'd be happy to go and get a license, but of course he can't because he is in the country illegally. But will we be safer somehow if they get a license, if somebody here illegally gets a license?
I go back to, we're a country of laws, and isn't there a path to citizenship in the sense that you get in line and like everybody else, and it sort of cheapens the people who have followed the rules. To me, it's a reward to be an American citizen, and those people have worked hard and studied and taken the tests, and I see the ceremonies, and I think it sort of cheapens the work that they've done if we just start handing out licenses.
Can we make a financial argument, though? Is there a cost, and I think this is sort of where you were going as well, Roberta, is there a cost to somebody getting into this accident? So there's a cost that the person is in the country illegally, and why are they here to begin with? I understand that part of it. But if they are here, and like this individual who was commenting, he went through the parade, and maybe he's been here for the 20 or 30 years, one of the ones that you said you would favor a path to citizenship for him. If we give him that license, do we now have some sort of recourse, of financial recourse? Do we actually save money in the state of Massachusetts by allowing him to have a license, or her to have a license?
I don't know. I honestly, I can't. There are trade-offs, but we're in a situation now. It's not just licenses, but as soon as people come here, even if they are illegal, they're getting a lot of services that, for 12 million people, we're talking about, taking it from others who are citizens.
I guess I do think too, Brad. I mean, if I'm here and I'm an undocumented immigrant, and I understand their point is I don't know, he's worked in the bakery for 30 years, hasn't done anything wrong, and his kids have gone to school, and America says we're gonna educate your child. If he now goes down, so to your point, we've already given some things. If he now goes down and he gets this license, are we bestowing upon him? You are a citizen in a way. You come walking in. We know that you now, because you're telling us that you're here illegally, but I'm going to give you
this
a document,
right? Which then has been translated into going to vote. That license has been; those licenses have been used so that non-citizens are voting.
I mean, is that a step? I mean, is that a concern?
It is an issue now. Yeah, and so far as I understand it, I mean, as a citizen, you have the right to vote. But if you're not a citizen, what right do you have to vote? You're not a part of this, of this country.
Brad, if you just get the license, does it give you the right to vote?
Well, you brought up a good example of a guy going to work for the last 20 years, and I just have to wonder. I have to fill out an I-9 every time we hire somebody or whatever. I just wonder how that system is working. And where Roberta really started is, I think Congress has been derelict in their duties to making sure that America is a country of laws, and we follow our laws, and we make sure our borders are safe.
Yeah, some of that is true, though, too. I mean, so it is all part of a larger whole. Well, let me ask you this then, and Brad, I'll start with you. So politically, to kind of go to where you were headed, Roberta, is this, along with what we talked about the last time that we were together, we're going to lower the voting age to 16. Does this somehow favor one party over another? Is there some advantage to the Democratic Party if I am giving, because it is Democrat, I mean, we're largely Democrat representative, but Governor Charlie Baker, for example, has said, if this comes before me, I'm going to veto. He is not in favor of having a driver's license for somebody who is undocumented, but the Democratic state senators and representatives who are pushing this certainly are.
Well, I think offhand, most of these undocumented people coming here are getting a lot of services for free, whether it's education, whether it's health care, whether it's the ability to use the libraries and everything else they use. And because they're getting a lot of those free services, I think they're more inclined to vote on the Democrat side. I think a lot of them have very entrepreneurial ideas, and they start businesses and they grow, and I think they come on more to the Republican side of things, where they will prefer less regulation in their business and more ability to grow their business.
And lower taxes.
And lower taxes,
right.
And the same. So on the short term, it probably does favor the Democrats, and in the long term, I'd hope that a lot of the entrepreneurial immigrants could go Republican.
Mm. We have just a moment left. I mean, your thoughts? Is this eventually is this a step to try to get people who are not in the country legally to be able to vote?
Oh, I think it is. I think it is being used that way for sure. And I think that there have been documented cases of that. Because once you have a paper that shows that this is a legal a driver's license, people use for identification all the time. So I think that is an acceptable form of identification if you go and register.
It's a slippery slope. You get your license, and then all of a sudden your I-9 form, and now you can work. And
coming up on Central Mass Chronicles, we are going to be bringing it a little bit closer to home. In the city of Worcester, District 1 Councilor Sean Rose has come up with a proposal. If you're driving around out there, the roads are in pretty tough shape. He says, what about an infusion of $10 million? He's come up with a plan where the city is below the tax levy to take $1 million. You and I would pay something extra, and we'll talk to our panel about this, but then $10 million would be infused into our roads and our sidewalks. What do you think about it? You'll hear what Brad and Roberta have to say about it straight ahead on Central Mass Chronicles.
Local news from Central Massachusetts for Central Massachusetts.
A car into a utility pole on Webster Street in Worcester this evening. Worcester reaches a new host agreement with its 14th recreational marijuana business. A fire breaks out in Groton today. A rollover crash in Worcester slows down traffic on Route 20 this afternoon.
Reporters in the field. And an in-depth local forecast. Worcester News Tonight on Charter TV3.
Hi, I'm Dale LePage.
And I'm Jennifer Ankowiak from Charter TV3's entertainment show, WooTube.
On every episode of WooTube, we bring you local music and comedy videos.
Our monthly interview segment with music and comedy venue owners and the best upcoming events in your area.
It's Central New England's music and comedy videos. Plenty of events you'll want to attend and so many places you'll want to be. WooTube.
We're proud to lead with high school sports stories in our sportscast.
Local sports have a unique way of bringing families together, bringing generations together.
People remember where they came from. They remember their high schools. They remember their playing days. I learned a lot because I played high school sports.
I absolutely loved every minute of playing high school sports.
Certainly our goal is just to cover the game and to highlight the positive of high school and local college sports.
There's no other place I'd rather be and there's no other job I'd rather do.
Using terms like moron and stupid and things, you can say, oh, Jim, that's not proper. Well, hold on a second. Set his own car on fire and painted N-word lovers on his home's garage in an apparent attempt to stage a hate crime. A Muslim student at Beloit College wrote anti-Muslim graffiti on his own dorm room door. He was found responsible for spray painting a swastika, an anti-gay slur, in the words, Heil Trump, on his own church.
So District 1 City Councilor Sean Rose has come up with an idea wherein there's no denying that our city streets are in some terrible, terrible shape. He's come up with a plan where, because we are, I believe it's about $12 million under the tax levy, and this is different than the rainy day fund. And you might even be able to explain that a little bit better for us as well. But we would be able then, because we haven't taxed to the max, we would be able then to take that $1 million, we would be able to use that to borrow $10 million, and his plan is look, whatever it is that we have allocated for the streets and sidewalks clearly isn't working, because the streets, especially in Worcester right now, are in terrible, horrible shape. Now, it would mean that, of course, we would be paying back this $10 million loan, so your taxes would go up. It may only be about $15 a year, another cup of coffee or two. Is it worth it? Roberta, I'll start with you again. Is it worth it?
No, because I am a constituent of District 1, and Mr. Rose, I would not approve this. What it basically means is raising taxes, and we are raising them every year anyway. I mean, I think, Prop 2.5 is sort of out the window, because I sit on the board of a nonprofit, and I just learned that their assessment went up 50% this year, and a whole category of facilities like this have gone up that much. And these people they're astonished. They're really hurting. So the idea, yes, I agree that the roads need improvement, but the council needs to accept its responsibility that if streets and sidewalks are important, look at the budget carefully and see what we can cut. I can list several things which I think are less important than fixing the streets and sidewalks, which affect every citizen in Worcester. Now, you're looking at me and you're saying, what should we cut? Well, do we really need the golf course? Should the city be in the business of supporting a public golf course? Number one. Number two, I have argued this for years, and I'm not ashamed of this at all. Does the city need to own a senior center that it's at least $200,000 a year? Now you say, oh, so many people come. Well, if you give it to them, they're going to come. If you build it, they will come. And yet we have senior services all over the city being provided by the Y, the Jewish Community Center, churches and synagogues, and so on. In a small town where they don't have those facilities, maybe you need your own senior center. But in a city like the size of Worcester with all these other facilities, don't need it.
So you take that money and reallocate it
Absolutely,
for
to
sidewalks and streets. Okay.
which affect all the citizens of Worcester. It's not just for one interest group.
How does it, just the math though, Roberta, before we get Brad's input on this, or Brad just cut in, that's fine. How does the math work though? So I mean, many communities, of course, do tax to the max. We are $12 million below. Isn't this one of the reasons that we are, so that we can use funds in this fashion?
Well, sure, but when you keep raising the taxes every year, and especially because we have the dual tax rate, and the businesses are really suffering from this, and they can't get any place with the council making a more equitable arrangement in terms of the dual tax rate. I mean, this has been going on for years, whereas other towns are doing this, like Auburn and Fitchburg. I mean, it's not like Fitchburg is in better shape than we are. If they can manage to try to even the tax rate between the two classifications, what is Worcester's problem? Worcester's problem is you just keep spending, and so this is adding to the taxes. And I'm saying the council has to take its responsibility of budgeting seriously and look at that budget. No, they cannot increase, but they don't decrease at all or shift categories or inform the manager before he sets the budget that they would like to see a shift in priorities. That's where the emphasis should be.
Brad, what do you think? I mean, we can't deny that the streets are in terrible shape.
I agree, the streets definitely have some issues, but with what Roberta says, the council, their job is that budget, to figure out how that money is spent, to make sure it's spent wisely. Taxes is really about the revenue for the city, and that's about choices. Do you fund a library? Do you fund a park? Do you pay for schools? Do you pay for policemen? And I would love to see the Councilman Rose, or all of them, jump in and say, this is where we can save $1 million and put it towards the streets. With a budget that big, they should be able to jump in, find some places, and if they really cared, find a way to eliminate waste.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I would think that, I guess I would argue that what Councilor Rose has done is Councilor Rose has said, okay, and you both say that there's probably somewhere to find $1 million in the budget. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not speaking for him, I don't know if he would argue that there is or that there isn't. But his argument to me seems to be that, hey, I've got a way to get that $1 million. It's only going to cost the taxpayer of Worcester, and I do know that only is a relative term, but it's only going to cost you $15 a year at the max. Would you be willing for $15 a year to have better roads?
But it's not just it's not $15 for 1 year. It's permanent, and once you issue a bond for it.
Well, but once I pay back the $10 million, which will take some time.
So the $10 million over the the span of the bond will be more than $15 a year on the taxpayer. And if you do $1 million this year, next year another $1 million for something else that's important. All these things are important, but I don't see the council really setting priorities and saying, we need to do this because this affects everybody in the city. Everybody is complaining about it. And these other things, a lot of the things that we do are for particular interests. So, whether it's the seniors or the golfers, why can't we look at this and say,
yeah, I don't know how far you're going to get with those two in particular. I mean, for the reasons that you already stated, or to find that. But I mean, is that really it? Is that, I mean, Sean Rose again has clearly done a lot of work to try and come up with the solution.
Well, it's easy enough to say, I know where there's $1 million. Yeah. I don't see, it's not very hard. You got that 12 million sitting there. Why don't we grab $1 million this year, and next year it's for something else?
The hard work is to do zero-based budgeting, where you go into every department from the start and say, do you really need this? This is something we did 5 years, 10 years, the last 15 years. Do we really need to do it again, or is there a better way to do that? Yeah, you're going to, break some eggs along that path, but you're going to be asking questions and make our government work a lot more streamlined for everybody.
All right, coming up, how many of you have heard about ranked choice voting? They've done this in Maine. It certainly has been controversial. Is it something where, and I'll explain it quickly and then we'll get into it. So the three of us, Brad and Roberta and I, are running against each other. Now I get 47% of the vote. Roberta gets like 46% of the vote. Brad gets whatever is left over. Sorry about that.
7.
Yeah, you didn't take it. Thanks for the math, and you didn't do so well. So now it's in ranked choice. So I win, right? Well, because I didn't get over 50% in ranked choice voting, what happens is Brad is eliminated. But you have said who your second choice is. So there's 7% now, and most of you, for your second choice to Brad, because there's some similar views here, have said that Roberta is your second choice. So I lose, even though the first time around I got the majority of the vote, because now Roberta will end up with over 50% of the vote once we go to the ranked choice voting. We'll talk about that if it's a good idea. There's some who would like to bring it right here to the city of Worcester.
I lived a life of people not agreeing with me. I made a career out of it. I like a good debate. I don't call it an argument. I like a good debate. A lot of emotion that goes into my debates. I put a lot into it because I really feel. So please always feel comfortable. If we don't know who you are. We don't check you out. We don't do a background check. You give Matt a name. I'm Bill. I'm Bob. You're Bill Bob. And I encourage you to come on and let's have some fun.
You can't get Worcester weather from a Boston TV station. The sun could be shining in downtown Boston, but the weather could be very different here in Worcester. People tell me all the time how much they count on our weather forecast, and we know how important that is to our Worcester News Tonight viewers. Each weekday, we'll give you your weather, your 10-day forecast for right here in Worcester, only on Worcester News Tonight.
Worcester's only local forecast, weeknights on Worcester News Tonight.
Local news from Central Massachusetts for Central Massachusetts.
A car into a utility pole on Webster Street in Worcester this evening. Worcester reaches a new host agreement with its 14th recreational marijuana business. A fire breaks out in Groton today. A rollover crash in Worcester slows down traffic on Route 20 this afternoon.
Reporters in the field. And an in-depth local forecast. Worcester News Tonight on Charter TV 3.
Your Worcester Firefighters Local 1009 presents a night of comedy at the Hanover Theater on April 26th.
And laugh at some of the funniest comedians on the East Coast.
And help us honor the life of our fallen hero, firefighter Christopher Roy.
100% of the proceeds will go to the Ava Roy Fund.
Special VIP tickets and reserved seats are selling fast.
Get your tickets at the Hanover Theater website, thehanovertheater.org.
Ranked choice voting, should it be used in the city of Worcester? And I just gave a quick example among the three of us about how it would work, so that even though perhaps I was the top vote getter in our little election, I didn't get over 50%, so then it goes to the ranked choice. The example that is used all the time by people who are in favor of ranked choice voting is that if you go to Florida in the election between George W. Bush and Al Gore, you had a third-party candidate who did get, what did he get, 7 or 11% down in Florida, and the state eventually goes to George W. Bush, but let's face it, most of those voters probably would have preferred Al Gore. With ranked choice voting, we would have had President Al Gore, Brad Wyatt, and what do you think about, and as I said, it's been used up in Maine, and a little bit controversial because the individual who got the majority of votes the first time around did not end up winning the election once you went to ranked choice voting.
Well, I think ranked choice voting points out one of the problems with where elections are going these days, and everything is becoming so polarized. You know, politics is a zero-sum game. You know, if you win with 51%, you get all the power. The guy with 49% doesn't. And I thought that everybody's supposed to work together, Republicans, Democrats, Green Party, Libertarians. And because everybody's not working together anymore, we're looking for different solutions to try to solve that problem. And ranked choice voting is one of them.
Well, let me just ask this. So, however, I have 3 or 4 choices. Ralph Nader, to use the example that I used down in Florida. So somebody could, I think, pretty honestly say, well, Ralph Nader right now in our system is the reason never to vote for somebody who is a third-party candidate, because you are then giving somebody else a vote. If you don't like Hillary or you don't like Trump and you go with that third-party candidate, you know, you went with Bill Weld or the governor or former governor of Mexico or whatever, you're really still giving that vote to one of the top two, because that third-party candidate isn't. Now, under ranked choice voting, well, I can vote for that third party, but if I put down, but Hillary's my second choice, then is my vote still being counted?
Okay, so, yeah, but here's the thing. We have a constitutional republic here, okay? So it's not a strict democracy, as we know. There have been plenty of checks and balances built into it so that it's not simply majority rules on everything. The idea behind an election in a constitutional republic is to choose representatives who will then try to come out with something that we used to call the public interest. Okay. Now that's very hard to come by, but you know, you think about the various options that you have and so on. And what you want are representatives who can do that. They reflect what the people are thinking, but they also have to use their own judgment. Now, in the way we elect people here, you already have that choice with the 6 at large, so that you can vote for any, you know, in effect, it is a ranked choice, because let's say there aren't 6 that you like, so you vote for 5 or 4. Or if there are, you know, 6, so you choose them, but you don't want all of them in you know, necessarily as much as you want some. And so you already have that preference that you can do in our form of voting. You don't have it with the districts because there are just 2 running. Right. So I would argue that we already have that with at-large elections, and that's for the school committee too.
Roberta, I know you're sort of a historian of the city as well. I understand that we had this back in the 50s.
We did have it when the charter was changed, so it existed from 1950 to 1960. Then it was voted out, and the reason was, and here are the problems, that it is for the majority of the public, I would say, and this is not in any way to denigrate the people, it's a complicated system. So I think, I mean, you know, you explained it fairly, but you saw in the report that all these charts of how you do this and so on and so forth. And I would argue that most people would find it confusing. And if you're going to have, you know, a representative democracy, you should make it as simple as possible for people to understand in terms of voting. And the thing is that I believe that it would divide people more. What we had with the 2-party system was that when the parties were in power, had power, they would look for the candidate who could appeal to not just a narrow constituency, but as broad a base as possible.
Yeah, I do wonder, Brad, as we have just a minute left here, do we
right of center.
Do we end up with how many parties? Are we building coalition governments, and what happens?
You see how that, because they have that in France, they have that in Israel. I mean, it works, but it's in Israel you have to form a coalition of parties.
Right, that'll give you the last word.
And don't forget, in Worcester we also have preliminary elections, which is a way you would have of eliminating some of those lower tier candidates that may siphon off votes. That is what we're trying to prevent with this. So there you go.
All right, so we're ranked choice voting. It'll be interesting to see if it gains some traction. It seems at the local level might actually be a harder sell than some other elections?
I don't think so. Because I think that you have to have what's happened now. I know the primary system is what has left us within this situation of having extreme candidates, because it's only the activists who vote in primaries, and they're picking the extreme candidates, and so we're not ending up with candidates that appeal to the broad, that the day after the election you wake up and you say, I can accept this guy.
That's what you want.
That's what you want in our system.
Interesting. All right, as always, thank you very much. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Brad. I'm Hank Stoltz, and thank you for watching Central Mass Chronicles.